tell me your full name and when and where you were born?
I'm William Homer Bowling. I was born over in the Grandpa Bowling Holler in the McWhirter community, about 10 miles from London here.
Do you have any family members that are serving or have served in the military?
I certainly do. I'd like to tell you about them. My older brother was in World War II. He got killed in Germany or Belgium area there. He actually was missing in action for several months. And when we only had one letter from him once he got over there, and he was missing in action. And then later on, they notified my parents that he would be. They had found his body, and some German family had got him and buried him in near their home. And now they say that he's buried in a national cemetery in Ardennes. Now I had another brother in during Korean conflict, and actually all the last three were in during that time, but one of them didn't go overseas. But I had a brother that did go overseas before I did, and then when I went in, his name was Marshall and Eldon and Homer. I'm Homer. So when I went in, I didn't have any idea where I'd be going to. So I wound up in Korea in about 2 miles of my brother that was over there, and we got to have Thanksgiving dinner together there in Korea, which we enjoyed getting together there. So it's just a wonderful time to see your folks in another country once you get there, you know. Going back to my brother that got killed in World War II, I'd like to tell you about camp that we have, a church camp over in the Green Mountain area. It is a Faith Christian camp, and our family gave the land for that camp back about, I think it was about 51 or 2 years ago, and I think we dedicated the first building maybe in '67. My mother passed away before we had actually a camp, a week of camp there, but she was there for the dedication of the first building, and so we were real. I don't know if proud is the word to use there, but we're proud to have a church camp there in memory of my brother that got killed in World War II. I don't know if there's any other thing that I could tell you about other than the other brother got to stay in Albuquerque, New Mexico, while he was in service. So we were kind of a family that we were all ready to go when Uncle Sam called. Not that we wanted to go, but we were ready to stand up for our country and to follow the flag wherever it was.
Do you have any grandchildren that have served
Grandchildren?
serving?
Oh, I forgot the main one, I guess, and that was old Kane. Kane Hensley. He's my grandson, and he's down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina right now. Just finished AIT training. He's going to be a real Marine, and I'm glad you asked that question because I'd forgotten it.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
Well, I was really pretty fresh out of high school. I had graduated from high school, and that fall I got a job with Daniel's apartment store here in London. I was in the retail business there for a while before I went into service, and so I don't know if that helped me any while I was in service or not, but I did get to spend a little time in a little PX in Korea while I was there, one of those little round Quonset huts where we had this PX for a little while. That was in the last part of my tour there, but I thought, with that extra training I had might have helped me to be in that part of it. I was actually in an artillery unit there, a 969 Field Artillery Battalion. We had about 3 guns, A, B, C, and C batteries. We had the big guns, 155 mounted on tanks, and I was actually a cannoneer. So I just would kind of throw some of that other stuff in there, but it was good to also to be able to get a decent job while I was there, also as a gate guard for the compound, to let the people in and out of our compound there and keep the hoodlums out from coming in and stealing our stuff. It's pretty bad duty there as far as people just wanting to destroy things. And so I enjoyed a lot of my service.
What motivated you to join the military?
Pardon?
What motivated you to join the military?
Well, actually, I didn't join. I was drafted, but I'm thankful that I was able to go because, of course, I thought a lot about my brother had been killed, and his purpose, you know, had something to give me a little more initiative to be a part of a country that serves the nation.
What happened when you departed for boot camp and during early days of training?
Well, actually, when I left home, of course, I thought I'd be going to Fort Knox, which is here in our county, and not in our county, our state. I thought I'd get to come home about every weekend on weekend passes. But when I got to Fort Knox, I was there for a couple of weeks or so, or maybe 3, and they put me on a plane, shipped me all the way to Fort Carson, Colorado, and I couldn't hardly believe that was where we'd be going, because everybody previously had gone to local camp here to train. But they sent me out there, and it was unbelievable. We got there to Fort Carson, Colorado, and there was a big sandstorm on, and we sat down in the plane and went to our barracks. Old barracks there was pretty rough, and once I was there, though, I really enjoyed being there in Fort Carson. I could see Pikes Peak up above us there, the snow on the mountain out in the middle of the summer, and here we was out training there during that tour there. So I had a real good basic training there in Fort Carson.
Do you have any memories of your instructors that you would like to share?
Yes, I do. I had some real good instructors. I had one thing I remember very much. I had a first lieutenant, and he was over the unit we was in, and we always had to go through the gas chamber training, and we were supposed to go in and take the gas mask off and give her rank and serial number, name and serial number there for that. And I was really concerned about going through the gas chamber. So I said something to this lieutenant. I thought maybe I've got to find out for sure if it's safe, you know. So he looked at me and he said, "Now, the Army is not going to hurt you. They're not going to have you do something that's going to kill you or anything. Everybody else goes through it." So that really made me, it was encouraged me that I could go through that thing, and I did, and no problem whatsoever. But I just remember that lieutenant talking to me that way and being that kind of a person as a lieutenant over an enlisted man. So I thought that's good to know that we have people like that.
Did you receive any specialized training?
As I actually, after I left Fort Carson, Colorado, they sent me back to Fort Chaffee, Arkansas to train to be a cannoneer at artillery training. I trained there for about 8 more weeks on the 105 Howitzer, which is a gun that'll shoot somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 miles. And we had extensive training on that. It was one of the worst camps I was in while I was in service. It was hot. Mosquitoes were terrible. The barracks didn't have any air conditioning. It was just so couldn't hardly sleep for the heat and the mosquitoes. But I came through and done well and had that cannoneer training. And then when I went to Korea, after that, directly from there, I didn't get to come home after that training. I was only home one time during my tour of duty, and but they sent us straight from Camp Chaffee and put us on a plane and flew us up to Fort Lewis, Washington. We left Fort Lewis on a boat. Took us 21 days to get to Korea before, and not even able to go home before I did that. So that was kind of disappointing. I was hoping to get to spend some time at home before I went overseas, but their particular group, they didn't do that. So there I was. And
Did you have a nickname?
pardon?
Did you have a nickname?
There wasn't many nicknames in service. They'd call you by your last name most time. Bowling this, bowling that, and had some real good friends there. I knew by their last name. Some of them you remember and some you didn't. Since that time, I've got information from people and been able to contact them by phone. I'll probably tell that a little later on in the interview here.
During which wartime did you serve in?
Just actually after the Korean War. It was just, the war was over when I got over there. But the results were unbelievable. The towns were bombed. Wasn't any decent looking towns or left. The little villages we went through, it's really pitiful. People out on the streets. Some of them had like a big old white looking trousers on, and it just looked so unbelievable what you see in those war-torn countries. And we traveled through several little villages going up to where I was. I was about 35 miles north of Seoul, Korea, right up on close to the DMZ, and we'd have a little village right next to our compound, and just grass huts and things like that. And the people would come there wanting food from the PX and things like that. You just felt so handicapped that you couldn't do something for them. It's one of those things that you just felt bad for them. When they had a funeral, sometimes I remember while I was on the gate guard there, somebody had died there in the village right next to us. And they came up the road carrying them on a stretcher, like on the shoulder of their casket. They didn't have vehicles to haul their dead in or things like that. No tractors to plow their fields. They did it by hand, everything they did there. It's just unbelievable what you could see in a war-torn country.
Do you remember when you arrived and what it was like when you first got there?
Very well, very well. Before I got off the boat, we were traveling up the Yellow Sea there from Japan and around the peninsula of Korea, and it was getting kind of early before daylight in the morning, we'd see little lights along the shoreline, and we couldn't tell what the country looked like till the daybreak. But when they pulled in there to the harbor, actually we couldn't get in. We had to get off and rode a barge into the land. But once we got in there again is bad signs. The scenes that we could see were just unbelievable. And they put us on an old troop train like thing. It is open, didn't have a enclosed place, and hauled us up for several miles to where we went. So as on a Sunday morning, I remember that too. And of course, I always went to church before I went home, and I could see these people out walking by the side of the tracks or somewhere. It looked like they was going to church on Sunday morning, and that made me feel good that there was people like that still interested in going to churches on Sunday morning.
What were your duties?
Duties? When I first got to Korea, the first real job I had there, they put me in a unit where we had, I think I told before, had big tanks with guns mounted on them that had 155 guns on it, and thought I was going to be in one of those groups there that is in B Battery, and but at the first 2 or 3 days I was there or so, we fell out one morning in a group. I always had to fall out and then take jobs where we went. So we fell out, and I guess the sergeant or whoever was in charge hollered, "A private bowling, report to the office." Forgot what they called that back then, but anyway, I was supposed to report to the office. Well, I got in there, and they told me that I need to report to headquarters battery. I had no idea what they had in mind. You know, you may have death back home or something, or they're going to tell me about it. But anyway, I left there and went over to headquarters battery, and told me to report to Captain Franks in headquarters battery. So I got there and walked in, reported to Captain Franks, one of the nicest men. And that made me feel so good, because you always fear the people that's over you a little bit. But Captain Franks was a real fine captain, nice man. And he said, "There's a need a man to serve on the gate guard there in our compound where people came in and out." And said, "We've been having a lot of trouble down there, and we need somebody that would be in charge and take care of the needs." Well, I couldn't hardly believe it that he wanted to put me down there. So that's what happened. I went down there, and I ran into some of the nicest gentlemen that while I was there, and some of those is what I talked about later here. One of them from Columbus, Ohio, another from down in, actually he was from Florida then, but in later years come to Sevierville, Tennessee. But those kind of guys, we just seemed like brothers, you know, when we were there together. And I enjoyed my work there for about 4 months, I guess, or 5, maybe even 6 months. I can't remember now. But anyway, we had an old captain back up in B Battery, and he was really regular Army. He was a man that wanted you to get some Army training, Army work. And we was like kind of like a military police on this gate guard there. I've got pictures of that. We'll be able to bring some with you when we view this. But anyway, he said I wasn't getting enough Army time down there on the gate guard, so he wanted me to come back to B Battery. I belonged to B Battery. So I got back in there, and I stayed around there worked as in a motor pool for some time and drove a 3/4 ton truck part of the time. I learned to drive what they call a deuce and a half. We had to have driver's license. And so I got driver's license there. And after a few months, we had a little company, PX there, is a little Quonset hut. And I knew this fellow was going to transfer out or go home. So I said something to my first sergeant, real fine man, good sergeant. I said, if he transfers out, I'd like to have that spot there in the PX. I'd had experience in the store business. So that time came, and he told some of them, he said if anybody else gets that job, said he wanted to know about it, that he had a man wanted to put on there. So it wasn't long till I was in the PX that he saw to it that I got to go to the PX. And I spent the rest of my time in Korea in that little PX there. I was just, we had some drinks, pop and things like that, and magazines, and troops could come up there and get them something to eat, snacks. And I believe there's 2 or 3 others. We did it on kind of a rotation. We'd be on one time and another. But I had some real good buddies there too that we worked together with, and spent most of my time there. And that was the last 6 months I was there. I really, what you'd say, had it made as far as Army concerned, and I just really enjoyed that part of it.
Would you tell me about some of the special people you met?
Yes, this one guy that I mentioned from Columbus, Ohio, Jack Timmons. He was a real buddy of mine. I had a real buddy in mess hall too. When I needed something to eat or a cup of coffee or something, he was there I could go in and get that about any time I wanted it. His name was Daniel Cravens. He was from over into North Carolina. Then I had a fellow from Tennessee, Jellicoe, Tennessee. His name was, I'll have to think a minute on this, but we just made good friends, and I'd go down there every night. He worked in the headquarters battery, and he was the fellow that brought in the confidential stuff he flew down to another place and every day about it and brought in confidential material to the company. And so I've met all those guys basically since I came back from the service. I've tried to get up with them, and if I didn't meet them personally, I've called them, and called one of the fellows that I was in the PX with, and his wife answered, and back a few years ago, and I told her who I was, and I was trying to get up with her husband, which was with me there, and she said, "Why do you ask?" And I said, "Well, just would like to know something about him." She said he had passed away, and that was a sad thing to hear. Tony Thompson was his name. We was good friends. There's several others. I can't remember them all. You just get acquainted with people, and they're just like family when you're away from home, and when you leave, even start to come home, and then you hate to leave them. And I was talking about my brother was over there we wound up about 2 miles apart. We got to have Thanksgiving dinner together, and then he had to leave me over there. I still had about 15 months to do, I guess, something like that. And when he left, 14 months, 15 months, and it was kind of hard on him to leave me because he had been there 10 months and was going home. So just things like that. You just come so close in a situation like that. Go ahead.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends while you were overseas?
Pardon?
How did you stay in touch with
Oh.
family and friends?
Well, I got to make one or two phone calls, I believe, from Korea. And the way we did that, we had to go down to a place, of course, Seoul was the biggest place there that we could go, and we could go to NCO, or USO it was, I guess. And they arranged me a phone call where I could call home. And I remember very well, it seemed like now it wouldn't be so much, but back when I was in service, money was short, and $35 sounded like a whole lot of money, and it was a lot. Well, I think we was probably making $80 or $90 a month or something like that. But anyway, it cost, the phone call was about $35, I believe it was. Of course, that was their first. Folks paid that just to get to talk to me, but I got to do that time too. But writing letters was only communication you had, really, as far as you could write a letter, and it might take a week to get home or a week back. And then we were able to do some, the old tape, what they call those, cassette, not cassette, yeah, I guess cassette. We mailed those back and forth. The family would get together and they'd sing and carry on, and all of them talk, and they'd get to, and they'd send it to me, and I'd make one, send back, and that's a little, really one of the best things. It wasn't like today to look at a picture on your camera, on your telephone, you know.
Would you tell me about the day your service ended?
Well, I'd like to tell you about when I got off the boat coming home from Korea to start there. I could have kissed the ground, really, when I got off that ship and landed in Fort Lewis, Washington. It's just so good to know you were on American soil. And the reason for that is seeing what was, and Korea was torn all to pieces, and it was just meant so much to see American soil. Now, they put us on a plane there that night. We flew most of the night, I guess, to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and I got to Fort Sheridan, and it was snowing, unbelievable. As the old saying goes, cats and dogs. It was snowing. We had to circle the airport before we could land. I thought, goodness sakes, yeah, come this far, going home, what if this thing crashes here before we get home? You have thoughts like that. But we finally got to sit down, and we processed there, and Fort Sheridan, and they put us on I guess it was a Greyhound bus, and rode the bus to London, Kentucky. Yeah, and another little story. I was riding with a friend of mine. He lived in Pineville, but to go back, we went in the Army at the same time, Fort Knox, and he went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I went to these other places, and I lost track of him. We got to Fort Lewis, Washington to go overseas, and there he was. We rode the boat overseas together, got to Korea, and he went one way and I went another. And when I got ready to come home, I got back down to Incheon where we got on the boat, and there he was again. We rode the boat back to the United States and to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, got out of the Army, and he rode to London, Kentucky with me. I got off the bus station and he went on to Pineville, Kentucky. He's from over in Pineville. It's just things like that happen while you're in service. It's amazing. It makes you feel. Now, he calls me every now and then too. He's from up north, high now or somewhere. I've got his number. I carry with me all the time here. Several of those guys' names, and I had a good friend out in Billings, Montana. I've visited him a couple of times. he's been to my house and visited with us. And actually, before I married back home, he came and visited us at the old home place. And so it's just such a closeness there for people.
What was your career after the war?
Well, I came back and went back to the store that I left, where I was working when I left. I got back home and worked there till 58, and I found me a bride. I'd found her back 3 or 4 years before that. We dated during the time I was gone, wrote letters and so on and so forth, you know. And so we got married in 58. She had 2 more years of college to do. So after she had 2 years of college, but she got 2 or 2 and then 2 more years. So we moved down to we got married. We moved down to Eastern, to Richmond, Kentucky, and we're in this little apartment. She finished 2 years of college, and I've got stories there I could tell, but it's amazing. We rented a little apartment for $35 a month. I got a job for $200 a month down there. Put her through college, the last 2 years, and we come out there, didn't owe anybody anything, and bought a new Volkswagen on the time of it. And that was kind of unheard of. When we bought it, I drove into London, and people would get around to looking at, they hadn't seen a Volkswagen much, you know, they'd look at that car. But just little things like that. We're getting off the subject, but I like to talk about what happened. So we've been married now. In June, it'll be 60 years, and we'll celebrate a 60-year anniversary, June the 28th. We live.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
Belong to DAV at Kiwi at 158, and I think I belong to the National too. I know I've supported them a little too, but anyway, I belong to the local here at 158 in Kiwi, Kentucky.
How did your wartime experiences affect your life?
Well, it was a good experience for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but I can look back now, and I'm thankful, so thankful that I could serve my country. And I'm thankful that my other brothers were able to do that too. We were all supporting our country. I got my grandson I mentioned earlier. He's doing the same thing. And it means something to hold that old flag up and salute that flag. Hear the national anthem. I stand at ball games right now, and when they play the national anthem, and it just makes cold chills run down your spine. So I think we've been over there and supported that flag in time of trouble, you know, and it still stands. Yeah.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
I'd just like to encourage those that go into the service, and not only the ones that go into service, but that lives here in the United States of America, to always support that old U.S. flag. You know, the red stripes and the white stripes, and it represents, to me, blood that was shed on the battlefield for this country. And, you know, Jesus shed his blood that we could have life. And people followed that flag and shed blood that we could have life here on this continent. So I'm thankful for that.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
Well, it seemed like I've stumbled around a lot on a lot of things here. I can't think of anything at this point, but I appreciate you all doing this here. And it's something that will be staying, I understand, here in the library where future generations can see this program, and not only for me, but all the other guys. Appreciate my friend Marion Parkey that came over here with me today. He was a World War II veteran, and he served in the same war that my brother did, and actually is over there in the same time, part of the time. So he was a medic. I think he told about that, and he's told me how many people he had seen over there and seen death on the battlefield and cared for people that were dying, and I just appreciate people like that. World War II especially was one of the worst wars I guess we've had. A lot of people died, and I'm so thankful that I'm from a family that was willing to go and be in service to our country.